Welcome, everyone, to the NFL Week 7 Market Outlook. I'm your co-host, Brett Matthew, at Deep Value Better, along with my partner and alt betting strategist, Judah Fortgang, at Throw the Damn Ball. In our Circa contest, we went 3-2, 17, 12, and 1. Now on the season, 58%. The market finally had somewhat of a difficult week, but one of the things we were just talking about offline, Judah, was how the market really hasn't gotten creamed so far this year. The betting public has so far avoided any kind of huge time bombs so far this season.
Yeah.
The consensus top 5 picks in Circa finally went under 500. So went 2-3 this week. Again, we went 3-2, so we got that one game of outperformance. And this was the first week all season that the top 5 Circa consensus picks were under 500.
Yeah.
Just to demonstrate how popular or how successful a lot of these popular picks have been thus far this season. And then one last thing to add is in Lee Sharp's NFL prediction game, this is the first week since week 1 that the market actually generated negative points, which means some big favorites were losing more so than, some relatively evenly matched games. And even in week 1, the market, it was basically flat. It really wasn't even negative. It was minus 1 point, which is basically flat. And even this week 6 was only still minus 36.8 points. And I'm sure you're well familiar with, participating in this contest last year. I mean, there was multiple weeks, minus 60, minus 80, minus 150 points.
Yeah.
And we didn't even come close to seeing any of that carnage. So
Yeah. I wonder even if we're going to see that carnage, which on the one hand, it's kind of surprising that we haven't seen kind of these poor consensus weeks because the Bucs, the Packers, a bunch of these teams really are not as good as they were last year. And as you can see, they're still being power ranked kind of top 10. But with that said, I think the market's starting to kind of adjust to that. And with the exception of the Bills and maybe the Chiefs, I guess theoretically the Eagles too, I don't think we're going to see such like huge 14-point spreads this year like we were accustomed to seeing last year, right? Like when the Bills played the Jags, it was Bills minus 14. We got Bills minus Steelers, but I think that might be like 1 versus 32 or 1 versus 28 or whatever it is. Like, I don't think we're going to see such enormous spreads that there's going to be such huge kind of collapses. This is at least for the prediction game. I think there's just a lot more parity and a lot more confusion of like who's actually good and who's not. Which leads to a lot of interesting betting angles.
Yeah, for sure. But even still, just there hasn't been any of those weeks where, maybe there's not going to be like the huge spread. So you're not going to get any of these like huge dramatic point losses off of one single game. But I think it goes even towards, again, like the top 5 consensus picks in Circa. We're now in, this was just week 6. And that was the first week. I mean, the top 5 Circa consensus picks are hitting at basically 60% right now. I mean, that's easily more than 10% off the average. Because you look back over the last, like counting the super contest, going back all the way to about 2008, and top 5 consensus picks hit in that 51, 52% range. So they're definitely outperforming. You're going to see some reversion to the mean there. And it's not super uncharacteristic. If you remember last year too, through the first 8 weeks of the season, is favorites were just cashing tickets left and right. Yep. And any sort of contrarian bettor was just getting their face ripped off. It was a historic run by favorites, just consecutively every single weekend, week out. And then it kind of topped in about week 9. And I posted a chart last week that kind of just demonstrated if you were betting the favorite spreads and favorite money lines, It was the best first 9 weeks in 20 years of data. And then it was all given back in just the next 4 weeks.
Yep. I remember that well.
7 weeks, over the next 7 weeks, then it was even more than that, and they were net down for the year. So it kind of goes back to where you would think, all right, if you're just a better just betting favorites on the spread and money line, like that's not a positive P&L strategy.
Yeah.
And if it is a positive P&L strategy for a certain time period, like that's an anomaly.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's kind of where we are today. And that would like another thing we were just talking about was if we can avoid those time bombs when they pop up, because we've actually been doing pretty well for given that the broader public has been doing so well. You'd think that maybe we would kind of get dragged the other way. And we've been able to weave in the right ways.
It's also not as if we've been on market at all. You've had a bunch of weeks really off market, which I think if anything,
including this
past week. More confidence. Yeah, of course. Which leads to some interesting strategy angles of like Circa. You have to pick 5 games, and you can be off market and still kind of have diverging outcomes. But look, I think it gives us confidence to keep pushing with where we're going. We're playing almost a different game, and like the Circa consensus is going to kind of fail, and if we just stay at the course, maybe improve a little bit, we're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and we would be sitting even prettier if we simply just didn't bet the Jags. Because that's definitely the singular team right now when I'm looking just at all the picks that we've made kind of season to date and who's the biggest detractor to performance for us right now. And it's the Jags. I mean, we've bet them 4 times. We're 1-3, including losing the last 3 weeks in a row.
Which is
But, it's not even like they were bad handicaps. So I'm not even saying like that we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
That we actually shouldn't have.
And
I regret it.
And there's an 100% chance I'm recommending them again this week. So I think we just need to establish that we're in for the Jaguars ride.
Yeah. And we're also 0-2. The next worst team that we are at betting at is, who do you think? 0-2.
I don't know.
Browns.
That makes sense. I was going to say the Lions.
No.
But we only bet them once.
We're only picked them twice, actually.
Yeah. But I was counting in the Eagles game, which doesn't really count.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
like
So
betting the Eagles or the Lions. Yeah.
Yeah. Betting against, we're 0-2. Betting against the Lions. We're 0-2 betting against the Patriots. We're 0-2. This is frustrating because we were high on them in the offseason. 0-2 betting against the Falcons. And then after that, just a bunch of kind of 1-0s. 2-0 betting against the Cardinals, your Cardinals.
My Cardinals.
3-0 betting against the Steelers. So cha-ching there. Definitely capitalizing on that offseason thesis. 2-0 betting against the Titans, capitalizing on that one. And then 2-1 betting against the Colts.
Right.
The thing is what also, the fact that these are even such large numbers, and we've only gone through 6 weeks, means we're also being like hyper-focused on betting a few select teams, and then even more betting against a few select teams.
Right.
Which that's not always necessarily a bad thing, because in fact, I've done some research as well, looking back at those who won these contests. And typically what they've done, in fact, is they were just really, really on target with like 4 or 5 teams. And they knew exactly when to bet those, when to fade them. And they just, they had a feel for those teams. They just kept leaning into those. So I don't think that's something I necessarily think we should necessarily go away from. We just need to be right.
I mean, look, I think that's what I was alluding to earlier. Just like the certain strategy of only being able to pick 5 games. And especially early in the season, when a lot of kind of the offseason take and as the market adjusts, I think it makes sense to lean into some early teams. But we'll see how kind of the rest plays out and like how our handicaps kind of change or stay the same throughout the season.
Yep. And again, 17-12-1, 58% through the 6 weeks. And again, in the 6 weeks, that's been relatively public, heavy, successful. I think we're sitting pretty. So before we jump into week 7, We missed our Sunday Night Tilt episode this week, so we're going to do a quick refresh of week 6. We'll look into some of our consensus market power rankings, see how some of the industry analysts have adjusted their rankings after week 6's performance. And then we'll also touch a little bit on some of our drive quality scores, see if anything sticks out there that maybe is meaningfully different from some of the realized scores that we saw. And then, we'll kick it off and dive into week 7. But also before we do, I do also want to just give definitely a round of applause to both you, Judah, and also Arjun, who was on last week's episode. You guys provided like some amazing, just spot on chef's kiss handicaps on both the Jets and the Bengals, who we had in our circuit contest. Both 2-0, both cashes. In fact, you also were so hot on the Jets that you bet and wrote about Jets minus 5.5 alt line. Again, alt line betting extraordinaire.
That's the specialty. Yeah. Thank you. Look, the good news is that I have the plus 500 to remind me that was a good take.
Yes.
Very
on.
It could have been even better if the Jets had that pick 6 right in the very beginning of the game.
That's true.
Packers even more
That's
so.
Not complaining. Being right is nice. The plus 500 is nicer.
Yes. All right, week 7 consensus market power rankings. Bills continue to stay at 1, and that's a consensus view right now. Standard deviation 0.
I mean,
ESPN, PFF, 538, Football Outsiders, and Predict all have the Bills at 1. No change from last week.
Is there even I don't see a take how they can't be number 1. That seems. I'm generally very, very, very skeptical of consensus. Extremely skeptical. I don't know how you can pick anyone but the Bills right now.
Yeah.
They're so much better.
Yeah, basically default. You have no other choice.
Yeah.
They're just so clearly far and away the better team. But that doesn't mean that they can't lose, and they still can't.
They're gonna lose to the Dolphins. That happens.
Yeah, and they were really a shade away from losing to the Ravens as well.
100%.
And again, even if Mahomes doesn't throw a pick, I mean, they could potentially have lost that game too. So I mean, they're still, even though they are by far the best team, still vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're by no means historically good.
No.
Even relative to the competition. And then we got the Chiefs there coming up in second. ESPN has them at 2, PFF at 2, 538 at 2. Football Outsiders a little bit off market at 7. In Predict also at 2. And then to round out the top 5, we got Eagles, Bucs, Cowboys with a big jump, certainly year to date. And this is also kind of pricing in the expectation of the return of Dak. And then to round out the top 10, we got Bengals in 6, jumped up 3 spots. Ravens down 2 spots. Niners at 8, flat. They were 8 last week as well. And then Vikings in Packers. Packers certainly with some of the most precipitous fall across industry analysts. Down 3 spots in general, now sitting at 10. The most bearish is Football Outsiders at 20th, 538 at 13th, PFF at 10. ESPN is kind of continuing to hold on to the Packers as a relative top 5 team, has them still at 6. And then another big jumper squeaking right outside the top 10 is the Patriots at 11. So almost in the top 10, jumping 9 spots year to date, 5 spots just this last week. People starting to believe in the Patriots. And it's some of the sharper industry analysts, so PFF 538, kind of has them higher there than someone like ESPN. ESPN still has them as kind of industry average at 14. Anything kind of stick out to you here, Judah?
I mean, how many times do I have to talk about the Bucs? that they're 4th is insane to me. Insane. They're not the same team. They're just not. The receivers aren't getting open. Their blocking's not as good. Tom Brady's taking a step back. You can't just rely on, defense in 2022. to kind of lead you to victory. And I don't think this offense is as good. And that, like, they just lost to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's terrible. At what point are we going to start actually downgrading them?
Although I know Tej had a note out today on PFF talking about how, just kind of highlighting something that we've all kind of seen and recognized is just this broader kind of downfall of offenses this season. He just did some work kind of quantifying that and then made a few kind of bet recommendations. And hey, maybe if you're a team with a better defense, maybe that isn't as like something you should kind of just sweep under the rug like we have the last couple of years. And he didn't necessarily highlight the Bucs. I think he highlighted like kind of fading the Ravens, fading maybe the Chargers, maybe buying a team like the Broncos. But the Bucs is certainly a team up there. And I'm not as bearish as you are on the Bucs. I think they can certainly continue to struggle here on a week-to-week basis. We were down on the Bucs from a season-to-date basis, and it's playing out. I mean, they're 3-3.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get too bearish because I think they can start to come around. I mean, they've dealt with a lot of injuries already. The wide receivers are in and out, and there's tons that you can see when you watch the gameplay too. He really misses Gronk.
Yeah,
like
which we talked about, right? That was part of the take. I think there's a you make a very good point, and it's important to clarify, which is as opposed to a different team, right? Say, I don't know a good example off the top here, the Browns, okay, with Jacoby Brissett. It would take a lot of consistent good performances to kind of elevate where they are now, right? Or even the Saints. The Saints, it would take a bunch of consistent good performances to say, okay, this offense is taking a step. We know with Brady and the Bucs that like if everything comes back, the ceiling is still intact, right? But like until that actually manifests, you got to take a step back in my view. Which is like we should be taking a volatile view of the Bucs. We should kind of assume that like okay, they have ceiling, right, and they could be the top 14, but they're not playing to the top 14 right now. And until they do so, we shouldn't be power ranking them as such.
Yeah,
it's almost the limitations of like a power rank, right? Just having to create one number, which obviously doesn't encapsulate the nuance of it all.
Yeah. And what actually is interesting is, I mean, so the standard deviation for the Bucs, so looking at how volatile are industry analysts' perception of the Bucs, and the volatility is actually very low. It's pretty uniform that across industry analysts still ranking this team as a top 5 team. And I think, they're certainly not a top 5 team at this point. I think everyone's kind of holding on to what they think that they can eventually evolve into. Scoring, basically 12 for the most of the game versus the Steelers is not an attractive performance. Off already some clunkers that we've seen.
I'll add one more. That's pretty surprising to me. The Colts at 17 is pretty shocking. They played
huge
terrific.
Jump this week off that beat of
they were terrific. There's no denying it. And like part of the frustration with the Jags handicap is that like I think the Jags side was perfectly right. The Colts side was just wrong. And that like did not see the Colts coming out and putting up a terrific offensive performance. But like I don't know why we're assuming that's kind of going to be the new norm. Again, as I just said with the Bucs, consistent couple of good performances. I'm happy to upgrade the Colts. But like, why isn't this a one-off in the same way that we have weird one-offs like the Bills losing to the Jags last year, or kind of the Chargers losing 38-10 to the Jags? Right, like that 10 points is an anomaly. This happens all the time. Or even the Jags lost to the Texans. Right, these things happen. I don't know why. Or just like, okay, the Colts are kind of back. Like they put 5 brutal games, consistent, 5 bad games on offense. I'm not ready to say, they're the 17th best team. No.
Yeah, so jump 7 spots. The one thing that I would say is maybe overlooked a little bit is now, should they be justifiably upgraded 7 spots off that game versus the Jags when they were down 14-3, still had to make a pretty considerable second half comeback. We look at the time weighted average margin, it was -3 for the Colts. Time weighted average win percentage 44%. So on average, they were losing that game. and nonetheless still being upgraded 7 spots. So I think it's certainly unjustifiable.
Yeah.
But this means that they were like ranked 24th last week. That they're not, because especially this is one of the things I wanted to point out, and I feel like maybe we overlooked as well. I think this was the first game where they had Pittman, Pierce, and Paris Campbell all available for them at wide receiver. And just the broader kind of offense is getting healthier. The defense is getting healthier. They didn't have Shaq Leonard still, but I feel like they've been the healthiest that they've been all season. And I think one of the things that you pointed out when we were on the Game Trade live betting is one of the things we wanted to see to make sure that we continue to feel comfortable with having exposure on the Jags was that the Jags were going to get pressure on Matt Ryan, which wasn't materializing. And if you give Matt Ryan time, a clean pocket with, Campbell, Pierce, and Pittman all at his disposal, that's not that bad of a setup. Whether they have Jonathan Taylor or not, I think is irrelevant. And that was one thing that you were calling out as we were watching the game. And you were kind of like reluctant to hedge our Jags position because we wanted the Jags to win. We wanted the Jags to cover.
Yeah, I needed that. That was a huge game for me. No, I think what's interesting is that like they changed their offense, which is they got the ball out really quick. Matt Ryan had a 2.37 time to throw. The idea was just to limit kind of pressures. I don't know if that was a game specific. But like week 5 against the Broncos, he was 2.79 time to throw, 2.71 against the Titans. You get the idea. So I'm curious if it's like a fundamental shift or it was a kind of one-off game plan to kind of slow down the Jags pass rush. But we'll see.
Yeah. When we look at the biggest 1 week movers, so the biggest downgrades, we got the Browns down 6 spots, Cards down 6 spots, Saints down 4 spots, and then a flurry of teams down 1 or 2 spots. Giants down another 2 spots. The market does not believe in the Giants. No one believes in the Giants. So still market ranked 24th, despite being 5-1. And it's not just the eye test is telling you that. I think even some of the numbers are telling you that. I mean, we called this out last week when, versus the Packers, their time-weighted average margin was negative. Their time-weighted average win probability was negative. It was negative again this time. So -3 points, time-weighted average margin, time-weighted average win probability, 43%. And again, these are the types of things like it's not super insightful as I talked about last week because we just know what happened. We know how the game played out. That's not very surprising. But, I want to put all these numbers together. Something like what we were looking at in the offseason, looking at that advanced kind of schedule, to continue to remind us how these teams have played kind of season to date. Because we're already now, even though it's just 6 weeks, you're already kind of losing track of, who played who, when, like, even at like week 3, it was like, who they play like week 1? I forgot.
Yeah, that's right.
Do any of these stick out to you as unjustified, justified, as far as downgrades?
I mean, I would move the Packers down more.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's the same extent of the same conversation with the Bucs, but their defense isn't as good, and their offense doesn't have the same ceiling, I don't think.
Yeah,
but the rest
downgraded just 1 spot.
Yeah, but the rest seem. I like that the market didn't really move on the Bills Chiefs. Not that there was much to move there. And the Giants is pretty surprising. But the fact that they were even with the Ravens, I would think that warrants a little bit of an upgrade. But perhaps basically the markets are saying like, okay, the Ravens are without Rashad Bateman, with these injuries, they're not really the same caliber team. Yeah. But I think this is like, early season noise. We're going to look back at week 7 and it's going to be the ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs that we saw in all those streams.
What do you think about Cardinals? So downgraded 6 spots. I know your thesis on Cardinals is certainly like a longer term play.
Yeah.
And,
It's gotta be
more or less
justified,
too.
Yeah.
Because you look even like our drive quality, like they're in the bottom left, quartile.
Yeah. Yeah. At this point, you have to downgrade them, right? Like you can't put up no points against a disastrous Seattle defense.
Yeah.
Right. 700 points. They got a bunch of points off a fumble return, a block punt, like that. It's at some point you gotta kind of see, okay, this team's not performing well. But at the same time, DeAndre Hopkins is back, and that's a huge addition. And we know the kind of on-off splits are generally pretty noisy, but Kyler Murray's been a lot better with DeAndre Hopkins, especially when he can establish the deep passing game. We'll see what Robbie Anderson can do, and like missing Hollywood Brown is big. But I think as it currently stands, the Cardinals move is justified.
When we look at biggest movers to the upside, we got Colts there at up 7. I mentioned Patriots up 5. Seahawks, Falcons, Bengals all up 3. Jets only up 2. Consensus market rank still 21st. Rams, Vikings both up 2, and then a flurry of a few other teams just up 1. Again, I think we talked about, Colts, obviously, this is off. This is also a function of just maybe overshooting to the downside.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I don't think the Colts were necessarily the 24th worst team.
Right.
When we look at standard deviation, this is one thing I want to call out. So the highest standard deviation, the most disagreement across industry analysts, where way up or way down, is the Jags, our Jags. Standard deviation of 10 spots. You got ESPN at 9, 538 at 30th. PFF at 27th. Football Outsiders at 8th. So just all over the map here. And then one thing we called out last week too was the Seahawks. Seahawks continue to be, kind of all over the map. Big upgrade by 538 this week. Football Outsiders had them at 10 last week, upgraded them a spot to 9th, but ESPN PFF still have them as a bottom 4-5 team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these teams aren't – these are the teams you'd think are even more volatile, and they'll be the most disagreement, right? Which is like, by analytical metrics, the Jaguars are shining, but they're 2-4 with some bad losses, frankly. The Seahawks guy, who knows what's going on with Geno Smith? Do you buy? Do you not buy?
Yeah.
And like Denver is kind of a tale of like, okay, their defense seems to be legitimately good, and like Russell Wilson's bad, but even though everyone loves to talk about how bad Russell Wilson is, in the back of everyone's head, it's like, okay, but is he going to turn around? I think that's certainly, again, it would not be shocking to see Russell Wilson go back to what he was. In the same way, it wouldn't have been terribly shocking.
Go back to what he was?
Oh, not what he was.
That would be shocking.
No. Yes. Okay. To go back to 90% of what he was. To be a 15th best quarterback and not a 27th best quarterback. Right. That's not crazy. And like the talent is still there. It makes sense they're ranking. It's some similar story with the Colts to a lesser extent because Matt Ryan's not 32, he's 38.
Yeah.
I don't know if those numbers are exactly accurate. I would be again, the Rams, Packers, and Bucs. I'm a little surprised they're not higher, but they do, at least the Packers and Rams are pretty high up on this list.
I think when you're looking at teams with the largest standard deviation in power rank right now, those are the teams that I think provide potentially the most value betting, because this is basically demonstrating like the market cannot get a grip on how to power rate these teams.
100%. 100%.
And so I guess it would continue to make sense for us to continue to lead into Jags. If we like them from a fundamental perspective, and then from a market perspective, they don't know how to rank this team anyway, or how to price them.
Yep. That's why I keep coming back to them. I'm trusting the numbers.
another one just to call out lastly here is the Titans. So you got PFF 538, top 10 team, ESPN 24th. Football Outsiders in predict still has a average to below average team. So some big disagreements there in perception of the Titans. They just come off a bye week, so it's quiet as far as kind of sentiment. Not a lot of people necessarily talking about them. But still a favorite this week. Well, we'll get into for week 7 versus Colts. Are you upgrading the Titans more so than, say, at week 0? Because obviously we were very – yes.
I thought there was real left tail potential that I think I'm willing to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes them – I also, I don't think the AFC is as good as everyone thinks. People are like, it's an NFC problem, but the AFC is still loaded. Many good teams in football.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening this season, and the Titans are at least in the conversation where they're not so bad.
Yeah.
They can be
I think that's emblematic of this season in the sense of I don't think any team is as good as you think that there are, and there's probably no team that's as bad as you think that they are. Right. Although, except for maybe the Panthers. Right now, standard deviation for the Panthers of 0. Unanimous, ranked 32nd.
And I'm the donkey who loved that over 7.5 bet.
Well, I think most of us, when we were doing our NFC, thought that I think that was a pretty unanimous view.
Yeah, I also we recognize the tails risk there, but
yes. And it just turned out to be that turned out to be the most important variable was the Matt Rule factor, the coaching, bad play calling. And because I can't still say that necessarily the talent is that bad still.
Yeah. And the beauty of this all is that I still lose the same amount of money. It's just one unit.
Yes.
Right? And I could have won a lot more than that.
Exactly.
Asymmetrical risk.
It's
Name of the
over
game. It's not over yet. I'm not. I think the 8 wins is just not happening.
Unlikely, yes. From our drive quality scoreboard, again, we called out a couple games already. Bills Chiefs, we got Bills winning justifiably by a full touchdown. Chargers beating Broncos by a full touchdown. So not as close as going to OT.
Despite not leading for most of that game.
Yes. That is another, very interesting. Time weighted average margin -3. Time weighted average win probability 43% for the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting distinction there. Jets decisively beating the Packers, so no asterisk there. Bucs and Steelers, we have essentially tying 22-22. And then the last one I would call out is Washington and the Bears. We got Washington beating the Bears 13-10. Whereas I would say most people who would say kind of watch that game and the eye test would say, oh, the Bears should have won that. Because the Bears were, inside the red zone 3 times, didn't get any points or whatever. And the only kind of score that Washington ended up getting was that muff putt, or the only touchdown that they ended up getting was off that muff punt. It was a 6-yard drive.
Yeah.
What I would say is what actually makes me confident in our numbers and confident in the model, giving us actually insight into this, is I know Josiah Sharp Clark, I know he had posted something along the lines of, because he kind of comes at what we're doing here, but more from a qualitative perspective, whereas our computer watches every play of every game. And he actually watches every play of every game. And his takeaway from this game was that he thought Washington, he scored Washington as having played better in that game from a net perspective.
Yeah.
So, and I'd rather line up with him than kind of the average everyday kind of dumb schmuck NFL
100%. 100%.
So I like that. All right, let's get into NFL Week 7. 2 more weeks, and we're halfway through.
Don't say that.
Thursday night football, Saints, Cardinals, Saints +2. Saw this dip down to 1, now back to 2. I think it opened up around 2.5, as you talked about DeAndre Hopkins coming back this week. I heard even Robbie Anderson might play, and I don't think that really moves the needle one way or the other. But no Marquise Brown now. I think he's going to be out for at least the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
And their offensive line is getting destroyed right now. And I think that can be, pretty meaningful in this game, in any game for the Cardinals. We can kind of see, just like from an injury perspective, 4 offensive linemen, either starters or backups, are banged up in this game versus Saints defense that's healthier. And then on the defensive side, also kind of banged up. But Saints likely missing Landry. I think
they're ruled out. Yeah, Thomas, Landry, Lattimore.
I think Olave is the only one who's going to come back this week.
Olave is going to come back. But that's, I guess we can talk about it now. The strength of the Cardinals defense is their secondary, which I think kind of mitigates the depth that New Orleans has at wide receiver. I guess there are a couple central questions to this game, which is the Saints offense really played well against the Seahawks. Number one, because the Seahawks defense is atrocious. Number two, because they brought back Taysom Hill, really used him as a weapon. And last week it was like relying on, I think, Rashid Shaheed happened, a 45-yard run and a combo of Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. I think almost there's a lot of tape out there which says, okay, this is what the Saints now want to do, which is like really grind in the run game. And if they're relying on big run plays, that's not a successful offense. Andy Dalton was not good last week. And kind of the strength of the Arizona defense lies in their pass defense. Again, you don't want to coach your bets. You don't actually know what's going to happen. I would not be surprised to see the Cardinals try and stop the run. And again, this is a good live angle, which is like if they're selling out to stop the run, I think the Saints are going to have a lot of trouble scoring. If they can get the run game going, it opens up everything. And they can kind of play well on offense. That's
kind of DeAndre Hopkins coming back this week is going to really move the needle from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, it's a great question, which is almost, are the Cardinals very similar to what they were last year and are just missing DeAndre Hopkins? And we know their offense is not great without Hopkins, but they're going to get back to the 2020, 2021 Cardinals. Or is this no, this is kind of a different offense, and they really have taken a step back, even with Hopkins. And there's something more fundamental than just the players on the roster. That's kind of driving the force there for the Cardinals.
And the Saints certainly outperformed, I think, our expectations last week versus the Bengals. In fact, that was another thing I did want to point out, actually, from our drive quality scoreboard in that game versus the Bengals. And again, we know this because we watched it, but time-weighted average margin for the Saints +5, time-weighted average win probability 74%. And we were kind of leading into the Bengals when we were live betting, expecting them to come back. But you don't want to put yourself in that position. You don't want to put yourself in a position to have to come back.
You don't want to rely.
Keep extending drives on third down.
Yeah.
So the Saints certainly played better than I think what even we thought. And now they have Olave back, at least, for this week.
Yeah.
So, and we look at the Cardinals, looking at our kind of drive quality from an offensive and defensive perspective in that bottom tier, that bottom left quadrant.
Yeah.
But I agree, obviously getting DeAndre Hopkins is a huge get back. It's just the question is how does he perform in game one?
Yeah. Yeah.
But because we saw in the past, anytime he was off, anytime he didn't play in the game, the offense didn't look right.
Yeah, it's true. It's also the fact that it's a suspension and not an injury leads me to believe he'll come right back. It's like a week one without playing the preseason.
Yeah.
This is a live bet spot, I think. But nothing to lean into before.
Mm-hmm. What about any of the first quarter or first half bets on this?
Do you know where the Saints line up? Because I know
The Saints are a
you and
little
RG
worse.
especially like fading the Cardinals first
Love
quarter, like
fading
first
the.
half.
Yeah, I actually have the graph pulled up right in front of me. Saints are not much better. Kind of. I don't know. I also want to see what the offense is like with Hopkins. Maybe they're going to script some stuff to him.
Yeah. Good point.
Seems exactly like they use for him.
Packers at Washington. Packers minus 4.5. I know this was at least at 5.5. Maybe it even touched 6. Kind of been dripping lower over the course of the week. Sentiment is really bad on both these teams. But still much worse for Washington. So on DraftKings, at least 72% of the handle, 76% of the bets on the Packers, as we talked about. Packers being downgraded 3 spots this week, down 3 spots year to date. Washington currently power ranked around 28th from a broader kind of consensus market rankings perspective. Pretty much unanimous across the board as well, around 25th, 27th, 29th perspective. So pretty much consensus agreement on how bad Washington is as well. But not the worst team or even the second worst team. Still at home. And now no Carson Wentz. Now we got Heineke. Do you like Washington?
No. How can you back them? Why would you?
Are you buying the dip? Would you buy the dip on the Packers? Do you think they haven't even been downgraded enough yet?
No, I don't. That's 4.5 is pretty shocking to me. And this is a team that could barely stay with the Bears.
Right?
Yeah, also
I like Washington here because, especially our drive, because again, I think most people are writing off Washington because, first of all, Carson Wentz broke his finger or his thumb or whatever in the first quarter.
Yeah, that's true. This just led me to an interesting play here, which is we talked on our last live stream about particular plays with the intention of selling out.
Yeah.
I think the play here is to bet the Commanders money line, grab that 175, maybe even actually move it to -2. I don't know what the alt spread is. A -2.5. Because I think at some point in the game, right, just because the Packers offense is not good enough to extend leads, and just because I think that Heineke in both directions introduces variance, because he could be really bad or just he's had success, right? Like this game against the Packers last year was really close. All of which is to say, I think there's going to be a point in this game at which the Commanders will be favorites, and we can grab the Packers at plus money.
Yeah.
Great middle.
No, I like that angle. Well, I guess my only caveat there would be is I think, maybe absent last week is the Packers were still up there as far as scripted plays. As far as still being one of the better teams. So that's what would make me cautious to try to lean into Washington right off the bat is if the Packers get up 7-0 and then that's done. And then they're done scoring.
Right. So maybe the play then is actually to anticipate or double down.
True.
Right.
Yes.
So this is
you
all
do half a position now.
Yeah, half a position later, just in case it doesn't come to fruition, just in case they throw a pick 6 on the first drive, like almost happened last week.
Yeah.
Which is interesting strategy positioning in addition to the actual handicap. Right, like the betting strategy itself is the particularly interesting.
Yes, and this is what, and now too, like I've talked to you about, is, we've always wanted to get very creative like this, and I know you already have been getting creative like this over the course of the season. I just got on DraftKings last week, and now my eyes are opened about the possibilities and the optionality, and now I feel like too, it's only going to be a matter of time before they potentially do some hard limiting and whatnot. But hopefully not. I actually heard
I never got limited.
They're not that bad. It's their reputation suggests. In fact, you need to take them for several weeks in a row before. So Corey, I think, at Clark 24, he's one of the best bettors I know. And he was saying he's severely limited there. He can't get any of his, accounts on there either. But he said it took a while for that to happen, in fact.
Right.
So
That's good to hear. But yeah, just the optionality DraftKings has is phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
And this is what I want us to do for the rest of the season, is to really angle into these types of exotic plays to where you can express, a view with precision.
Yeah.
And because we're very good at being able to not just handicap outcomes of games, but flows of games. And I think this is a great way to do that.
And that's where we get the most. We can pick off the best lines.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is one of the
flow of the game.
And the best thing about the 5.5, best things about the alt lines is, and this is in all honesty too, for hedge fund managers, okay, is when you don't need a 50%, you don't need to hit 55% to have a winning record. You can hit 30%, 28%, and have a winning positive P&L because you're taking levered positions with like ridiculous odds that are mispriced.
I hate to toot my own horn too much, but if you go to the bottom of my, let's say, PFF article that I posted today, it says that I am 11-20 on the year for an ROI of 126%, which I think goes to show kind of how wins and losses are totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant.
Yeah, if you're implementing a truly sophisticated strategy like you are, whereas most people are just betting sides and totals or props or things with essentially like basically negative EV, like right off the bat, with very high taxes, essentially. And from that perspective, you have to hit 52.8% just to break even. So much better if you can hit 30% and be up 100% P&L.
Gorgeous.
All right, a tangent there, but that's the type of stuff we should try to hone in on. And I know it's hard to do it like through every single one of these games, especially when we're on stream or kind of maybe going through it for the first time. But I know like between now and game trade, live betting the games, and Sunday morning, and one of these weekends too, I want to like wake up not at 12:45 p.m.
Maybe I'll come wake you up.
Try to get on sooner with you and like actually strategize and like get some positions.
Yeah.
And I will make that happen. Giants at Jaguars. So I guess you already hinted we like Jaguars here.
Actually not.
What I would say is the counter.
That was sarcastic, just to be clear. That was.
Well, we are.
I am on the Jaguars, but that was a facetious comment, just considering how our Jags luck has turned in recent weeks.
Yeah. But what I would say about the Giants is what it makes me a little bit cautious is because the market hasn't upgraded the Giants. So you could try to say like, oh, the Giants are 5-1, they're not nearly this good, and the Jaguars aren't nearly as bad as being 2-4. So like, let's lean into Jags. But the market, everyone knows the Giants aren't good.
But
or at least they think that they're not good. Who knows? Maybe they are.
Right. So honestly, that's not the thing that gives me pause. But if you go back to our chart with power rankings, the in-predict ranking is really what matters for the exact pricing of this game. Because what the in-predict is doing is taking the market power rankings based on this exact line, right? And I think it's 17. It's 24 for the Jags, and 26 for the Giants.
Yep.
Right. The play is not on the Giants. It's really on the Jags. The market's saying they're 19th. I think they're closer to like 11th or 12th. And in predict, or the market, in this case, the actual -3 spread is saying 24.
Mm-hmm.
So the pause that I have is that like perhaps we're overlooking something it could be totally noise, or that like the Giants are going to make this a trend and like they're going to stick around games, and there's something about the way the team is built, there's something about the way the coaching staff is that we might not necessarily be able to quantify with numbers that is saying this team's going to stick around and can win games. That's what gives me pause. But at the same time,
the Jags are certainly the type of team to let them do that.
That's true. Although I will say I do trust Doug Peterson and his coaching staff. They're a young team for sure, but I do trust Doug Peterson to kind of and this is, as you're talking about, I was speaking with Josiah Clark, Sharp Clark, talking about how Doug Peterson has admitted to some of his mistakes in recent weeks about how, that pitch we saw on the 4th and 1 It's like the process was there. It was a bad play call. The results were
Okay.
bad, but that was on my fault for calling a bad play, which leads me to believe he's not going to like
Force
approach the situation differently. Exactly. I think he's taking it from the kind of right perspective. But to get back to the handicap here, the Jags are being priced in as the 24th best team. I think like our draft quality has them at 10th and 11th offense defense. Trevor Lawrence has been, Trevor Lawrence has been very good against the blitz. He's been good against man coverage. The Giants play a ton of both man coverage. They blitz at the highest rate in the NFL. Right, there is a noticeable gap on our chart here, and I think the Giants' defense is being propped up by some really, really dreadful opponents. Right, like the EPA ranks of their opponents: 22nd, 32nd, 25th, 24th, 23rd, 4th drive quality, 22nd, 31st, 25th, 28th, 24th, and then the Ravens 4th, hampered. Right, which leads me to say like, okay, the Giants' defense not really that good. They haven't really been tested, and I think the Jaguars are exactly the type of matchup because of the man coverage angle, because of the blitz angle. I think they'll have no bother running the ball. There'll be no issue with, especially if they're leaning into Travis Etienne against the Giants' run defense, which is allowing to 5.6 yards per carry, which is the most in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like there's a strong, I think, both fundamental angle and matchup angle, which leads me onto the Jags with the full kind of other side being that okay, maybe there's something we're not getting with the Giants, that they're going to stick around games and they're going to pull them out, or it's totally random and it's totally noisy.
Well, the thing is, again, according to our drive quality, I mean, they're not nearly the 24th ranked team here.
That's what I'm saying.
They're basically saying that they're generally an average offense.
Yeah, not average. Not even average. Top, it's 10th and 11th. 10th on offense, 11th on defense. Top 10 unit.
Right, so that's saying the market is mispricing the Giants. And they're mispricing the Jags.
I agree. We should we should include a drive quality
rankings.
Keep saying this. I'll actually add it to the script. Include a drive quality power rankings.
Yeah. Yes, that would definitely be interesting. In fact, I can add it here as well. And then we can add another column to see exactly what the delta is.
Yeah.
Between that.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, too, we actually should add, I don't know how many deltas we want here, but we should have a delta between the market rank and the in-predict rank, to give a sense for that.
I think that's absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can just, continue adding to the best chart. There it is.
Yes.
It's pretty.
All right. I'm not convinced on Jags yet because I feel like we just keep canceling ourselves out here. And we'll see.
I'm stronger. I'm stronger on the Jags. Mm-hmm. I want to say I recognize the other side, but you gotta trust the massive. It's such a big fundamental gap, right? It's that standard deviation that we talked about earlier. Yeah. And I'm coming firmly on the other side, which is I see the angle for the Giants, but I way prefer the Jaguars angles here. Home also.
Really wish this was below 3. It was 2.5. I bet it at 2.5 already, but now it's at a nice, strong, flat 3. I'm not going to move up.
Yeah.
But all right, Bucs at Carolina, -11. Another double-digit spread for the Bucs. Another road game. But now they're playing the worst team in the league. Consensus worst team in the league. Whereas we knew the Pittsburgh Steelers were certainly not a good team. They're certainly a bottom 5 team, maybe bottom 3 team. But they can still be frisky at home. And they were missing their top 3 cornerbacks, and the Bucs still couldn't do anything. Who's going to be quarterback for the Panthers, too, is a question.
PJ Walker, I think, was named starter.
Today?
I believe so.
I know it's still pretty much a question.
I'm almost positive I saw that today, but I certainly can't. We need Dan here, our resident.
Yeah.
Okay, I see now. NBC Sports. PJ Walker will start again for the Panthers this week. Sports Illustrated. Panthers name PJ Walker. Panthers Wire. Panthers to start PJ Walker.
Gotcha.
I mean, First off, I just want to say repping the Panthers and Rodney Smith, but that does not mean that I'm backing. That does not mean I'm backing the Panthers. I mean, 10 for 16 for 60 yards in an NFL game. You talk about like fat left tails. You talk about offenses that are not competent that you can't back. Like this is example number one. Does that mean that they won't necessarily be able to figure it out by week 15? No idea what it's going to be in week 15. But at the current price point and the current point in time, there is no way I can back the Panthers. I mean,
and 51%, according on DraftKings, at least 51% of the bets coming in on the Panthers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of selling of the Bucs there, especially at the double digits. And I talked a couple of weeks ago about feeling very uncomfortable betting the Bucs at big numbers. One of the reasons definitely stayed off of them last week versus the Steelers. That was the biggest. Another thing I was reading from David Purdom from ESPN last week was, sportsbooks had a great week, and that Bucs Steelers game was the biggest decision that they've had season to date. Just ripped the face off of public bettors in that one. And so now you can make the argument that the broader public is butthurt on the Bucs, even though we're not seeing a huge downgrade from them in the consensus market power rankings. At least on a 1 week perspective, everyone just lost a bunch of money because everyone was piling into the Bucs, thinking it was free money. And now the Bucs are back with another double-digit spread. From a market perspective, purely, I could see how it could potentially be attractive, and the Bucs can squeeze out one of those. I mean, we just saw the Rams beat in not pretty fashion, but because the Panthers just play so poorly, still ended up beating them by double digits.
Yeah, it just the worry I have, and it's a weak angle, granted, but I don't have anything pointing me to the Bucs, is that like it's one fluky fumble that gives the Panthers a touchdown, one fluky interception that gives the Panthers the ball, one big punt return, and it's like, okay, I don't trust that the Buccaneers offense is going to put up 24, 28 points to cover, and in which case, the Panthers score, they earn 6 points, but get 7 points handed to them, and we have a 24-14 type of game.
Yeah, and the Panthers defense has been sufficient.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Probably, not worth dabbling into. Lions +7 at Dallas with the return of Dak Prescott, 49 total. Lions have scored well for us on our drive quality metrics, obviously put up a massive stinker. Definitely my biggest kind of net loss P&L perspective on a single game season to date. Just trying to buy the dip on that Patriots game and just not getting any bounce. We know Jared Goff struggles under pressure, and now he's going to be playing a team that excels in pressure on the road, coming off the bye. You think the Lions are going to be healthier than they have been?
Yeah, they have some long-term injuries though. Between DeAndre Swift coming back, Amon-Ra St. Brown is coming back. Certainly important. Certainly will help them. But DJ Chark does not look good. Jameson Williams does not look like he's returning anytime soon. So there still are some big holes. And the offensive line's healthy, which is great. And I mean, the defense is Swiss cheese, so that's not going to help. What do you feel about Dak Prescott?
I mean, I'm lower than him from a market perspective, just like long term. It's just how I've always felt about him.
But do you think?
This is not a bad setup to come back versus a terrible defense at home.
Yeah, this is. I think. I'm not sure if to express this necessarily in this game, but the long-term handicap on the Cowboys, I actually think for all teams, they're one of upgraded. Not even relative to the rest of the league, but just relative to how good I thought they would be, which is that the biggest question marks are almost been taken care of, which is
Michael Gallup's back healthy as a secondary receiver. CeeDee Lamb is as good as advertised. And like Tyler Smith has done an admirable job on the offensive line, where in the preseason I kind of had three main concerns, which was like, okay, the defense is not going to be able to sustain the same rate of pressure that they had last year, and they'd be able to create the same number of sacks and turnovers. That seems to not really be true. The defensive line is really good, and that looks like it's continuing. Two, the offensive line lost some real key pieces, but they've had guys step up. Jason Peters, Tyler Smith have really come in and done a great job. Not so concerned about that. And to a lesser extent, like there's still a bit of a concern because no one's really stepped out outside of Gallup and Lamb. The secondary weapons would be an issue. But all in all, like the team is still, I think, better than kind of had them in the offseason and has addressed those needs, which is why they're being power ranked fifth.
Yeah.
And I think like if you take a look at the NFC landscape, Dak Prescott might be the best quarterback. There's certainly an argument for it.
Sure.
And in this spot, like as you said, I don't trust the Lions defense to stop a nosebleed. And the 7 doesn't mean much to me in a game where I think the Cowboys can blow the roof off them.
Yeah. I mean, I think prior to the Lions, though, and this is the thing, it's like how much do you want to get hyper-focused on one game? So I would say if you remove the Patriots game, I feel like you would say you're getting 7 points with a Lions team. That's like a perfect backdoor cover number.
Right.
So, I mean,
So
I'm definitely not betting the Cowboys here. That's for sure.
This is seeming like another live betting strategy play, which is if you think at some point.
But now I'm scared to buy the dip on the Lions live betting.
There you go. But you can't. That's why you got to back the Jags. You got to like learn that even though you're gonna be butthurt on them, time and time again, you got to just keep on backing them.
Just go down.
Which is like okay. So maybe the play is to kind of make the bet that the Cowboys are going to jump out to a 10-point, 14-point lead, get some plus money odds there, and then take the other side live. And maybe that's the expression, which is like we know there's potential for the Cowboys to really blow them out, and you can hedge a little bit of like Lions money line if that doesn't happen the other way, and like the Lions are the ones leading from the start, in which case they're sitting pretty. I see this as I don't have a good grasp of the Lions. Maybe I'm filtering in too much of the Patriots game, but also like I'm kind of high on the Cowboys, and I think they present a difficult matchup for, as you said, Goff, who like really struggles under pressure. And if the defensive line can overwhelm the Lions' offensive line, I don't know if the Lions can get anything going.
Yeah. Falcons at Bengals. Falcons, again, still being priced generously. Plus 6.5, almost full touchdown. I think it opened plus 7. I was talking to Corey. He said he had bet some plus 7 already. Then it dripped down to 5.5. I know I saw on DraftKings here. And now it's bounced back to 6.5. I know AJ Terrell went down. One of their better cornerbacks. Falcons, one of the handicaps last week for the Bengals Saints was that the Saints, are one of the worst teams in the league at generating pressure on the quarterback. And they still sacked Burrow 3 times.
Yeah.
And now you can make the same criticism in this matchup, which is the Falcons are one of the worst teams at generating pressure on the quarterback as well. But it seems like everyone's generating pressure on the Bengals right now.
Right.
And the Bengals, again, time-weighted average margin was negative versus the Saints last week. But now they come home, Falcons 6-0 ATS, and it's very well known that the Falcons are 6-0 ATS. I pretty much hear it cited on anecdotally, every single podcast that I've listened to.
Yeah. I like the Bengals in the spot. I think the defense is good enough to slow down the Falcons, meaning their defense is good enough to meaningfully create downgrades. I think last week was a fluke off of like a bunch of long rushes. I don't think that's happening again. And I don't see, especially without AJ Terrell, and this is something we spoke about in the preseason preview, which is like actually the Falcons secondary looks okay on the surface, but like once one or two guys go down, like, all shit's going to break loose.
Yeah.
And, like, they're really, really lack depth, and they have a lot of weak links. Like, if A.J. Terrell's not playing in this game, all of a sudden, it looks like a weak secondary unit. And I think Arjun made a really strong point last week when he talked about even though the Bengals lost on that Sunday Night Football game to the Ravens, Burrow showed a willingness to kind of play to the two-eye structure and just take what's there, which leads me to believe that the Bengals are going to take what they have. The Falcons' defense is not good. They'll be able to score at will, and the defense is good enough to slow down the Falcons.
And the Falcons got to lose ATS at some point.
And the Falcons have to lose ATS at some point. Although, who knows when that will be.
This week. Yeah, so Casey Hayward, also been out. So being potentially down top two corners now in this game, and a flurry of injuries elsewhere on the defense as well. Banged up. So I think, one of the things we were lamenting was some of that handicap in the Bengals Saints didn't necessarily, it ended up winning the bet, but didn't necessarily win the bet for exactly the reasons that we kind of wanted to win the bet for. We talked about explosive offense, and that certainly played out. Was that even if you get behind the sticks, this is one thing I was talking with Arjun about, was that part of the handicap came through very strong. Was maybe you're going to be wrong about some things. Maybe the Bengals start off sluggish. Maybe they're even down for most of the game. But because they have such the explosive offense, they have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that's just snap of the finger and you get right back in the game.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Right, exactly. And which is, we kept on leaning into the Bengals money line, kind of knowing, okay, it's going to come. Yeah. Exactly.
I wish it was cheaper, though. So that's just the thing. It's like at 6.5.
But it's especially if we're talking Circa here, I want that hook.
Sure. Bengals upgraded 3 spots to that 6th now in our market consensus.
Or drive quality, by the way. Has them at 2.
Loves the Bengals. Where we got the Falcons here? Down here.
12. No. That's 12 on offense. Drive quality. If we took a
defense, got to be like bottom 5.
Yeah, exactly. If we took a strictly 50-50 split, then the Falcons would be 21st. If we weighted offense a little more heavily,
yeah, I think it would have to be at least 60-40.
Still 21st.
Gotcha.
I did a 60-40 and a 50-50. 60, they're both 21st.
Yeah. Where's the market here on DraftKings? 59% of the bets coming in on the Falcons. I mean, again, when you're 6-0 and now you're getting 6 points versus a team that I feel like, the Bengals feel like kind of like a wet blanket to most people. Like they're just not kind of coming through the way everyone wanted them to. They're not as flashy as they have been. They've had some big plays, but not like last year. Maybe it does come together this time. And 2, the Bengals are now coming back home as well. Falcons being a dome team now getting back outdoors. I like it.
Yeah. I like it for sure.
Yeah. Browns at Ravens. Browns plus 6.5. Another kind of juicy number here. I feel like this should be lower, but I'm glad I talked about and looked at, saw that we're 0-2, because I feel butthurt on the Browns, and now I can quantify why we're butthurt, or at least why I'm butthurt on the Browns, because we haven't made any money on them.
Yeah. I don't feel butthurt about the Browns, even though
you rarely feel butthurt.
That's true. With that aside,
when you feel butthurt, it's probably a huge buy signal.
Huge, yeah, exactly. But I think this plays out similar to the way I'm approaching this game, similar to Green Bay, Washington. I'm glad to see Dan back in the chat. Yeah. Which is that I think at some point, Browns offense is good enough, and The Ravens, Dan, we needed this injury stuff when we were going through beforehand.
Yeah, you half of it already.
Yeah, but thank you for the updates now. Sorry, but the Browns, I think, are good enough on offense, and the Ravens have struggled enough on defense that I think at some point the Browns are going to lead during this game. But I want to kind of buy into the 230 now and then grab the other side when that becomes available. Because I don't like the 6.5, and I don't want to stay off this game because I think there's going to be a lot of volatility with that. But like the Ravens are explosive enough on offense and everything's working right that I see a bunch of angles that like they'll cover the 6.5. I don't know. The Browns are a confusing team to me.
Yeah, I mean, we have them generally. I mean, they're in the same quadrant.
Same cluster. Definitely the same cluster.
So at this, like, I mean, if we had any sort of like implied point differential, certainly wouldn't be 6.5.
I can run that quickly. Yeah, I forgot that we need to run those. I have that.
We have a lot of things kind of like on the back burner that aren't necessarily being fully leveraged, and yet we're still 17-12.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Not bad. With a lot of firepower still yet to be put to use. It's not even about the Ravens blowing a lead versus the Giants too. It's about the Ravens scoring 17 points or whatever they scored versus the Giants as well. And now also that Ravens type of performance is like not even outliers now. Now it's becoming like a habit.
Yeah.
And also it lines up with Rashad Bateman being out. I mean, they simply just do not have.
They have no one to stretch the field. They don't even know one to stretch the field. It's Mark Andrews, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think when I was listening to Tajan Arjun's taking the points, I think Arjun was comparing that game to Ravens Dolphins last year, that Thursday night football disaster.
Yep.
That was one of the very kind of first games that popped up that season where it was like head scratching, like Ravens, like, oh man, they might have some problems here.
Yeah. It's true. I kind of like the variance of the Browns that the 230 offers rather than the points.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. Colts plus 2.5 at Tennessee. Looks like this could move to 3. I've seen some 3s pop up already. It's on DraftKings. It's plus 2.5 reduced juice, 42.5 the total. I mean, we don't like either one of these teams, so it's probably something just to avoid. I've pretty much only heard unanimous, again, in my anecdotal experience, listening to podcasts, etc. Dan, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this one as well. I've pretty much only heard Colts love for this. Everyone's seen, because also everyone wants the Colts to be good. Everyone thought the Colts were going to be good, and now you got a little bit of a glimmer. Oh, that's what I expected the Colts to be. They're back. And again, like I talked about earlier as well, I mean, they're healthier, I feel like, than they've been. But I'm not betting the Colts here.
No.
And all Dan has heard as well is Colts love.
The only thing I have to say on this game is it's almost the 1-year anniversary of the my favorite trade I've ever made of buying the Titans division odds and the Colts money line. I would not be making this trade. I think the Jaguars can win this division. I think you nailed it though. Like I don't really know these are two bad teams as we see on our graph right here. There are a lot of moving parts. I want to fade the Colts, but I don't want to buy the Titans, and I'm trying to stick to two-sided handicaps. I'm off this game.
Actually, this could be a great setup for Colts start slow, Titans start hot.
Oh, of course, I forgot to. This goes to that saying, and certainly if you follow my Twitter, it will be on there. Titans draft quality, scripted plays number 1. After that, number 32 in draft quality. Always a play. It's a live bet. The team under, and depending on how the game's going, in the same way we did when these two teams played earlier this year, when we bet the live under, right? Until the market is pricing in which they're not going to because they don't have the ability to team adjust. Until they're pressing in that the Titans are number 1 on scripted plays and number 32 after that. Take advantage.
Mm-hmm.
That's like an auto. In the same way that if Patrick Mahomes goes down and you get a plus money, bet it, auto.
Yep. All right, Tennessee, first quarter, first half. That's the bet to make for the Colts. Versus the Colts. Jets down to +1 at Denver. Opened 3.5. I bet the 3.5 right away. And now, I guess it's potential like Russell Wilson might not play. And now it might be Brett Rippon. But in any case, my worry here is one of the graphs that we were kind of honing in on last week and why we're so strongly leaning into the Jets versus the Packers was, Zach Wilson plays really well from a clean pocket, but then he plays terribly from, under pressure. And the Broncos are one of the best teams at generating pressure right now. And now it's going to be on the road as well, off a big win, back-to-back road games, and now being priced aggressively. Now everyone's upgrading the Jets. Everyone's excited about the Jets. I liked it at 3.5, but at 1, I can't. It seems too late.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, which is I thought I'd be on the Jets here. I'm not. Only because I really see this as a slugfest type, and like I don't think Zach Wilson's the same 2021 quarterback, but this would be the spot where he regresses, facing a tough defense in altitude, who gets pressure, who can create good coverage. This does seem like the spot where if I'm really going to upgrade Zach Wilson, I want to see him play well in Denver, right? I don't want to project him playing well in Denver. I want to see him play well in Denver. And that doesn't mean I'm backing the Broncos. Certainly not. I think everything we can say about the Jets, you can say about the Broncos, which is the Jets do a really great job generating pressure. Russell Wilson's taking way too many sacks, or if it's Brett Rippon, same thing, whatever. They're missing Garrett Bowles. Right, he's out for the year. And like you got to see the Broncos before you actually back them. Yeah, see them put it together once. I've lost a ton of money on the Broncos, by the way.
And I think this was the chart we were leaning into last week, which is Zach Wilson down here, clean pocket efficiency, one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
But then one of the worst under pressure.
Yeah. Which under pressure is generally less stable than kept clean. I just want to give a shout out to Kevin Cole for that graphic. Does a terrific job there. But yeah, I mean, like in a spot against Denver, granted the Jets' offensive line is getting healthier, I still think Wilson's going to be under pressure, and that can cause some real issues.
Yeah, I would say actually, what's the total on this?
It's 38. It's so low.
Yeah, very low. So but low. 38 is not even close to low enough if this is going to be a 2022 low-scoring game.
Which, by the way, if we do get some early scoring, this is the perfect time. Perfect time. Yeah. Really, I'm excited to re-listen to this episode and actually take down notes of all the things I'm saying now, and then actually live betting that.
Yes. Executing a trade plan.
Executing the trade plan.
Yeah.
Gotta actually have it down on paper to execute.
Yes.
Make money.
Texans at Las Vegas off their buys. Both teams coming off their bye.
Yeah.
Houston +7, total at 45.5. On DraftKings, 57% of the bets coming in on the Raiders. Again, not much to say about these teams, at least because neither one of them played last week. We got the Raiders at market consensus power ranking 16th. Texans 30th. A lot of disagreement on the Raiders, actually. So one of the bigger standard deviations that we see, ESPN has 8th, certainly a square kind of power ranking. PFF at 18th, 538 at 22nd. Football Outsiders at 24th.
Seems like a big number. Certainly one of the better offenses according to our drive quality metrics, but certainly one of, if not the worst defense next to the Lions. So does that mean the Texans can cover a full touchdown? I mean, the Texans don't sit here really as bad as you'd think that they might otherwise be sitting at right now.
Yeah. I'll pull up if you look at the weighted draft quality, we've got Vegas 20th, Houston 25th.
So, I mean,
our model is definitely going to suggest a
Texans.
slight lean on the Texans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also true. That in the Derek Carr era, their offensive efficiency. It was Arjun, I think, taking one of my graphs actually. In the Derek Carr era, the team has really, really struggled when getting out to a lead. And we've seen the Texans are very plucky. Another live betting trade.
True. Yeah, exactly. Did it versus Chargers.
Yeah, exactly.
Held up versus the Jags. I mean, they put together, a lot of tough games. I mean, obviously blew out the Colts, or when they were up 20 points.
Yeah, I don't trust them with the
like bad defense versus bad offense, and then vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say I think maybe this could be like a sneaky 45. If this game starts pretty slow, I wouldn't mind
over
in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Chiefs at 49ers in San Francisco. Chiefs minus 2.5. I saw I hit a 3 already. Probably going to end up right around that 3. Niners obviously dealing with a bunch of injuries. So there's a lot. I mean, the Niners show up well in our drive quality. The Niners have showed up well in a lot of kind of our rankings and other metrics, but that has to account for the injuries.
Exactly. It doesn't account for the injuries on the defense. Not that really mattered in the first place against the Chiefs. They're going to beat a good defense anyway. But I think there are almost two questions here, which is one, is the Niners defense good enough at their current juncture to at least slow down the Chiefs? And two, which Niners offense is going to show up? Right, I have no idea. The Niners have had pretty, varying outcomes. They dominated the Panthers. Right, they put 37 on the Panthers. It's not like the Panthers are a train wreck on defense.
Yeah, who cares?
But they didn't show up against the Falcons last week. They didn't show up against the Broncos. They didn't show up against the Bears. They showed up against the Seahawks. They're going to show up against the Chiefs. I don't know. There's I think maybe I'll post this tomorrow about like the scripted versus not draft. And it basically has the Packers, Rams, Niners in the exact same spot on the top left, slightly we're in the same spot like the Packers and Texans occupy on this graph, where they're both good scripted and then pretty bad the rest of the game. In which case, as we said on the live stream last week, Chiefs jump out to a lead. I don't want to be backing Jimmy G down.
Yes.
Right. That's hand.
And that's why you were very reluctant to gain any Niners exposure once they're down 14 zip.
Yeah.
This is not the offense necessarily built to really come back.
Yeah. And I think the Chiefs can really hammer, especially if they're being downgraded a bit on their offense on account of the Niners' defensive production in the first 5 weeks of healthy players. That's a spot I'd like to back. I like the Chiefs all here for sure, even pregame. Essentially, just saying though, the market is not accounting enough for the injuries, which I think is how you get to a 2.5 point spread.
Yeah, I'm imagining in Circa this is probably going to be 3.
Yeah, and I think it'll be pretty heavily Chiefs. If you don't think so though, then I would definitely want to.
No, I think the Chiefs are going to be very heavy. Very heavy.
Yeah.
I haven't heard too, and Dan, I'd be curious to hear what you, since I know you're on top of a lot of what the market is saying, podcasts, other sports bettors, and things like that. Is I haven't heard a case for the Niners yet, so sounds pretty imbalanced as of right now. And again, it's such a short spread, makes me nervous. Again, the Chiefs too are not outside of that first game versus the Cardinals. I mean,
And the Bucs.
And the Bucs, yeah.
Which is a good defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, like, they're still occupying the number 2 spot on every offensive efficiency metric.
And see, this is a perfect summary of what we've talked about, but what is the handicap on this game? It's all KC. The Niners are too banged up. Oh, you're going to get under a field goal potentially.
But then the line movement's surprising. We're going from 3 to 2.5. And I think it might close at 3, but I don't think that's necessarily the guaranteed handicap.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to close at 3. In fact, what is 89% Chiefs on DraftKings?
Interesting.
Which again, they skew squarer. So,
yeah,
I mean, lines up exactly with what we're talking about. But again, it doesn't mean, again, like squares win, square bet win.
But I want to make that's an important distinction to make because meaning we can tell where the pricing is coming from. Right? I care more about the fact that a handicap is square when I'm kind of unsure what's being baked into the line. I can say with pretty good certainty now what's baked into this line is that the Niners defense will do enough to slow down the Chiefs. If that's what's being priced in, and I know that with relative certainty and as much certainty as we can have, then yes, I do want to be. I don't care if it's a square take because if that's what's being priced in, and I want to fade that angle, I'm going to bet the Chiefs here.
Yeah, but we don't know that is.
Of course not. Of course not.
That's a great example of why you were leaning into Chiefs Bucs. Why you're leaning into Chiefs versus the Bucs, because you knew what the handicap was, and even though it was and that's what you wanted to fade.
I think we're seeing the same thing here, which is why the total's not 51.5. Right, I'd be curious to see what the Chiefs team total.
I like that. that. And especially on our drive quality too, though. The Chiefs defense has not played as well as I feel like most people evaluate the Chiefs defense as actually playing top half of the league.
Right.
But according to our drive quality, that's certainly not the case.
No, it's 3 and 7 by our numbers.
So yeah, that is a really great observation. That this total, should be higher if that was the case, and this could potentially be pricing in. Oh, the Niners defense is going to surprise at home.
Yeah,
and if that's the angle you want to fade, then that is definitely a good reason to lean into Chiefs. Especially, man, I would love it if Circa does get under 2.5. Probably going to be the number 1 pick. But we'll see too once we kind of get through the whole slate, kind of where this game would fall, especially if we wanted to price in. Again, we don't need to get too game theory-ish yet. Again, we're still only at week 7.
Yeah.
Game theory really starts coming in week 9, week 10, and then depending how far back.
Let's stack up those wins.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry about it.
All right, Seahawks +6 at the Chargers. I think this was 7 for a while.
I saw 7. I even saw 7.5 before.
Okay, so some Seahawks buying on DraftKings, 72% on the Seahawks. Obviously, the Chargers did not put on a great game for the eye test on national TV, going to OT versus the Broncos. Could not move the ball at all. And obviously they're banged up too, and their offensive line is getting just totally torn up. And if they didn't have Justin Herbert, man, the Chargers might be one of the worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah. A couple things
to do here. And is Keenan Allen coming back?
Exactly. Keenan Allen, I think, is coming back. I believe I read that he's slated for a week of full practices. But I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it with him.
And so what do you think about?
Okay, I just read a tweet that says Keenan Allen, if he might want to take one more game to let his hamstring heal with the bye in week 8. Quote, yeah, most definitely. It's going to be a thought process going into it. Definitely want to play the smartest way, and if that's the best thing, then that's what it will be. So I don't think he's. I think they might be giving him one more week. If he's
This
back,
is a big spread. One of the things I've talked about too on a week-to-week basis.
yeah, you certainly don't.
Very tough.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks defense is so bad that like the Chargers will be able to move. Well, and something I'm looking at is that I think the Chargers defense has played a lot better in recent weeks. Granted, it could be a function of playing the Broncos.
I mean, look at this too. I mean, we got Chargers and Seahawks, same quadrant, very close to one another.
At what? I mean, what's Geno Smith? Is he the? Like, we're gonna look back at this and say, okay, didn't do that much against the Broncos, did nothing against a good Niners defense, did well against a great Falcons defense at home, was unbelievable against a ferocious defense against the Lions in a dome.
Yeah.
Was really good against a bad Saints defense in a dome. Didn't play so well against the Cardinals at home. At the Chargers now, I don't know. I'm not willing to buy Geno Smith.
That could be fair. But I don't think I can buy Chargers at such a big spread.
No. I don't
I mean,
like the spread. The Chargers have shown no ability, especially if Keenan Allen's not back.
Yeah, and especially if Keenan Allen is out. If Keenan Allen is out, then could you lean Seahawks? I mean, obviously, this line dripping lower is probably pricing in an increasing probability that Keenan Allen's not going to play. That's another way.
I'm not backing the Seahawks. No. I'm not buying the Seahawks. Over the long run, and I think.
Okay. Also, this is another game that could be more than 50% Seahawks fans at that game. Man, the Chargers, like when I wasn't even like necessarily watching Chargers Broncos. I was like doing something else, but I was like listening to it.
Yeah.
And then when I would hear like a big cheer, I'd be like, oh, like something happened for the Chargers. And it was for the Broncos. Like, it's just like everyone knows this, but it's just like week in, week out, no matter like how good the Chargers are, they have a name brand quarterback, like certainly one of the funner teams to watch typically, not last week.
Yeah.
But still just cannot get fans in that stadium, man. It's like
no, they gotta move back to San Diego.
Yeah. Pittsburgh +7 at Miami. Tua's playing versus
I think he's back. Dan, you can confirm for me.
And then also I think Pickett might be back. Trubisky was like one of the highest scoring PFF graders this week.
Yeah. I think they're going to go back to Pickett if he's available, and I think he practiced, but who knows the NFL's new concussion rules.
Sure.
And their new concussion protocols. I want to go to that Kevin Cole chart. Where Tua is, and we see where Skylar Thompson, Teddy Bridgewater are.
Wow.
I think the Dolphins want Tua back.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's decisive.
Also,
so the 7 is certainly pricing in, Tua playing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Who is number? I mean, I'm giving away my answer here. In our weighted drive quality, number 32 team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Dolphins are a buy here.
At 7.
At 7. I even hope it stays at 7 for Circa. I want that.
So I mean, for Circa, no, there's
7.5.
Especially coming off a win for the Steelers at home, beating the Bucs. No one's gonna. I mean, they might take the +7. +7 could potentially be.
Yeah, and I love the Dolphins here. Which is, I don't think it's being properly priced in how much better Tua is, at least right now, in that offense. the thesis that didn't manifest last week, which I think is a product of poor scheming on the Bucs' part. Exactly. Which is that exactly to Dan. The Steelers secondary is still awful. I think the Bucs' failure to capitalize on that is a product of the fact that teams are perfectly covering them at 52%, which is like a dysfunction on their offensive coordinator, offensive scheme, and their wide receivers' ability to get open. I don't think that's true of the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, the Dolphins team are going to be especially prone to kind of the matchups. And they should be able to walk all over the Steelers secondary. And I think, too, is exactly the quarterback will take advantage, and I think they can put up a bunch of points. And I think that if we're adding a little bit of flavor from the narrative angle, I think Mike McDaniel's hungry to get the Dolphins back into the conversation as a top team like they were after week 3.
Yep. And we also have according to our drive quality scoreboard, I mean, that game between the Dolphins and Vikings was closer.
Skylar Thompson doesn't get hurt. I think they win that game.
Yeah, I agree with that. And still, even Waddle and Tyreek both blew up. So, I mean, one of the same game parlays that we were leaning into was Thompson, Tyreek, Waddle.
Yep.
And Thompson had 90 yards passing in the first quarter. Man, that was setting up to going to be.
That was going to cash for sure. Yeah, I shouldn't say for sure. And as much as we can count on bets cashing.
Yeah, I like this. I like this versus Dolphins. I like the buy on the Dolphins and the sell of the Steelers.
Great two-sided handicap. Two-sided handicap there.
And especially, as Dan points out, too, if that Steelers secondary is still banged up, I mean, they're starting people off the practice squad.
They're still bad. Even if they're not banged up, they're still bad.
All right, last game of the week, Monday Night Football. It's a doozy. The Bears at the Patriots. Old school Patriots kind of bully ball is back. I mean, the Patriots are continuing to surprise. And when they have you on the mat, I mean, it's like you're done.
Yep.
Done it a couple weeks in a row now. Again, some big upgrades in the market. Almost a top 10 team now. Up 10 spots year to date. Up 5 spots just last week. PFF has them as 12th even. And again, it's more the analytics-heavy industry analysts are higher, in fact, on the Patriots than something squarer like ESPN. So I know we've been cold on the Patriots. How are you thinking about them now?
I have no. I want to avoid Patriots at all costs because I don't have a good take on them.
Okay. So it's not necessarily that you still want to sell them. It's just you don't have a signal.
No, I have no signal.
Yeah.
I thought I was on them. I was on them last year. I timed them perfectly last year, which really was onto their rise early and very quick to jump off the train. I don't have a good sense this year. Because I don't think I have a good sense of Zappy. He's played really well, but I have no idea whether to think that will continue or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything to suggest that it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to just Bill Belichick putting young quarterbacks in good positions and also not to make mistakes unless you're just a bad quarterback and you just make those mistakes. And he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking also at our drive quality. I mean, they're in that top right quadrant.
Yep.
Patriots with those handful of teams like Eagles, like Bengals, like Bills, like
Sixth
Jets.
best team by our weighted drive qualities, number 6.
Uh-huh.
And
now playing the Bears,
30.
who are atrocious.
We have them 30th, 31st.
And this is in New England. I just feel like the Bears are the exact type of team that can be bullied, are susceptible to be bullied, susceptible to being buried.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the alt spot or nothing here.
Actually, I like that too. Yeah. Patriots alt spread.
I'm going to give it an absolute blowout. They run all over them. Give me a nice same game parlay with, especially if Damian Harris is out. Give me Ramondre Stevenson, rushing yards. Give me a game scenario in which the Patriots just run and dominate the Bears and force a bunch of turnovers.
Yeah. And this is already creeping up. It was at 7. Now it's at 8. Probably trying to protect against some of those teasers. Those are probably going to be a very popular teaser leg.
Yeah.
Certainly not one of the more popular bets, though, thus far as what we've talked about. So, again, using DraftKings as a proxy, 71% of the bets on Patriots. So, I mean, certainly not even one of the hottest. I mean, there's more tickets on the Seahawks than the Patriots. So that 8, that 7, that full touchdown could be scaring more of the market off. And I mean, when you're ranking this high, that could potentially be attractive. Again, we'll see where we are in a couple days. But I think we have a handful of kind of decent games here.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. That's going to wrap up our NFL Week 7 market outlook. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Dan, for joining. And we'll see you next week. Are we going to do Sunday Night Tilt?
Yes, sir.
This week? All right.
Maybe even
That's
maybe
usually
even an extended.
when I look at the analytics of like the listens and the views and the volume of kind of just the broader exposure gets, that's always the number one.
Makes
Everyone's
sense.
ready to listen on that Sunday night because everyone
That's
else
right.
is on.
That's right. I hope we can do every Sunday night the rest of the season. I certainly do not have any plans. I'm not going to be offline at any point. Let's just put it that way.
All righty. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Judah. And that wraps it up. And that's closing bell. Thanks, everyone.